So tonight we're welcoming Girls Like Us. Girls Like Us is an independent magazine based in between Brussels, Amsterdam, and Stockholm. It's a queer feminist arts publication that emphasizes on the community of women from all genders within the field of art, culture, and activism. On this collaborative path towards non-patriarchy, Girls Like Us unfolds feminist legacies through personal stories, essays, and vanguard visuals. Our speakers are Jessica GYSEL, the founder of Girls Like Us, and Katja, one of the editors. Aside from the magazine, Jessica works as a creative strategist and copywriter for both commercial and culture clients, with a focus on LGBTQ visibility. Katja, as a visual artist, addresses the parameters of film and photography from a meta perspective through her practice, using them as non-transparent media. Today's lecture, in the guise of an ABC, talks about queer and feminist publishing. Through quotes, accept images from the magazine, events, exhibitions, books, fairs, and other activities we are involved, we get a glimpse of what it means to make a queer and feminist magazine today. Now, please give a welcome to Girls Like Us.
Hey, hi. I'm Katja. I was just introduced, thank you. Thank you for having us. I've been working with the magazine since 2014, and I'm part of the editorial team, and I'm also responsible for the art direction and visuals.
And I'm Jessica GYSEL. I'm the founder, the publisher, and one of the editors of the magazine. And I think before we start, because I'm not so sure if you're all familiar with the magazine, by the way, we have copies here. If you want to have a look afterwards, feel free to have a look. And we also brought some extras, so you can also buy one if you would like that. I started the magazine in 2002, and it was not called Girls Like Us at the time. It was called Cut, and I know time goes fast and not everybody is familiar with the magazine, but it was the sister magazine of Bud magazine, which was quite an influential gay magazine, and I think it was the beginning of a revival of print media and zines and smaller independent publications. I made the issue for the magazine for 3 issues. Working together with the guys was quite complicated, so I took a break and rethought what I really wanted to make as a magazine. And in 2005, I made a first volume of Girls Like Us, more in smaller format than it is today. It was really like quarterly. It put a lot of pressure on the whole team to make it like every 3 months. It was also like financially quite hard, and I think at one point I was a bit fed up. I wanted to reach like a bit outside of this sort of lesbian harness, and then I did a major redesign with a bunch of people, and then we made the magazine as it is today, and so far I think we made 12 issues of that second volume. So the talk today is, as you know, talking about how the magazine operates and what it means to be publishing today in the digital age, as we all know. And the talk is ABC. We won't do all the letters, don't be worried. And it's called All Bodies Conspiring.
A is for agency. The power to start something, the power to get things done differently.
So the ambition with the magazine from the very start was to give a voice, to empower and make visible people who are already changing society from within. Artists, witches and healers, dancers and performers, thinkers and doers. And it's often people that we don't see so much in other media. Of course, we have been dealing with bigger names, but we find like the ones who work more in the margin, who who are lesser known are often the ones, of course, who make a difference. And I would like to read a quote from an interview with Shanta Smith-Cruz. She's a woman who runs the Lesbian Herstory Archives in New York. And what she says is, I think, quite exemplary for the magazine. So she says, it's us tapping into systems that already exist and overlapping them with the systems that make us queer. Family buildings, marriage, and co-housing, space sharing. We rented something bigger than we needed so that we could share the expenses with others and thereby allow everyone to pay less than market rent while funding a community project and saving to purchase a house. And I think that explains a bit like what we also try to show with the magazine. And another quote I really like is from General Sisters. They're a queer and feminist collective based in Braddock in Philadelphia, and they run a general store. And I would like to quote from their vision: from the foundation to the roof to its contents, General Sisters is built from the generous and active redistribution of resources, manifesting a tangible practice for rethinking capitalism and consumer agency, while emphasizing the intersectionality of the economy, the environment, the social, and quality of life.
B is for bodies. The visibility of lesbian, queer, and feminist bodies on their terms has been central to Girls Like Us from day one. Our recent issues all work with the themes such as work, play, secrets, future, family, economy, and latest issue, biography. And I want to read for you part of the editorial that we wrote for the issue 7 themed body. Dear bodies, we're happy to present a new body of work, 120 pages exploring the body and bodies, inside out and outside in. Bodies that dance and move, bodies making waves, body double, bodies at work, bodies working with the body, using the body as an instrument, the body as medium and message of touch and of being touched, the singular body as the very basic of the we. The body as a radical gesture, a tool for revolution, a dance, a movement, a trance. The body as always excessive, always exceeding, sexualized, racialized, read, and documented bodies. The body in relation to words and language, and the body in its attempt to break free from description. C is for collectives. Vigorously experimenting with the idea of how our communities can work together and support each other.
And we love collectives, and we love people who have a collaborative practice, and we have featured many of them in the magazine from the very beginning onwards. And we are very interested in this kind of practices, and often they are started by artists or like creative people, and we hope to learn from them and share the knowledge that they have with our readers. And also here I would like to read some insights that we have featured in the magazine. For instance, on ownership and copyright. Ownership is something to critique. Ideas are not a property, but more like a lubricant. And that's a quote from Emma Heddich. She's a researcher based in New York with whom we work a lot. Or another quote on structure. Every part of the chain represents a human relationship. So it's important to bring human exchange and respect into the process. In this sense, the process is as important as the final result, if not more important. And that's a quote from Sisters of Light. It's a weaving collective based in Beacon in upstate New York. Or on business, relentless learning and growing is at the center of this business. And of course, we try to reflect these kind of learnings in the magazine. And also we at Girls Like Us, we really work as a collective. We start from a collective point of view and really try to make room for different voices, trying to be as inclusive as possible, breaking down patriarchal values and concepts such as ego, individuality, genius, or like the male genius, the idea of a vertical career, where you try to climb higher and higher the whole time. Instead, we really believe in something that we call radical softness, where we embrace trial and error, we make room for failure, for learning by doing, for amateur approaches, and on learning, playing and compassion.
E is for economy. Win-win situations, opening possibilities for everyone involved. So it's clear by now that we try to give an alternative for capitalism and neoliberalism, and of course this also applies to the magazine itself. Our economy editorial framework goes like this. Framed and inescapable, indescribable, uncontrollable, and essential economies are everywhere. Oppressive and enabling, lucrative and undervalued, there are economies that trade our emotional labor, desire, our love, our fertility, our time, minds, our queerness, our politics, and our cliques. There are economies that we can control and that control us, and those that can subvert or serve our collectives. A mark, a yen, a buck, and a pound, a conversation with a cat, an app-enabled journey through a rainy Shanghai night. In the margins between intimacy and power. In the kitchen with your record collection under the tip of an iceberg at the top of a tower that she built. And dancing at a lesbian bar.
So queer and lesbian feminism met high fashion for a blind date. Who paid? And I think it's nice because from what I understood, we are the only magazine or the only publication that's coming to the talks, and I think it's nice to elaborate a little bit on how we pay for the magazine. So there are many ways to pay for a magazine, and we have been deciding from the very beginning to team up with advertising. I'm not sure why, but we always had a lot of support from fashion brands, and there's always been an effort from their side to make ads that fitted with our readership. It's not that it always works out, because as open-minded as fashion brands might be or pretend to be towards lesbian culture and feminism, and the spectrum of gender expression, as much as they claim to be open for different aesthetics and body formats, we often get a reality check and unfortunately are seen as too subversive. And at the moment, we're in the middle of a research about how to create a more sustainable future for the magazine and also be less depending on advertising income only.
F is for formats. Come as you are, to find new forms where people can identify. In the actual magazine, we experiment with different editorial approaches, and it's an ongoing exploration in which that also keeps it very interesting and exciting for ourselves. So there is, of course, the classic interview, the one-on-one, which is the backbone of the magazine, but there are many other ways of talking and meeting and writing. So sometimes our interviews are time-coded, because time, as said, and especially queer time, are important to us. Or we edit a conversation into a manual or an alphabet or reader, a recipe. There's often Q&As. There is the auto interview, travel journals, diaries. And there is a healing road trips, book excerpts, the 3D interview, printed exhibitions, and we also print on totes and t-shirts, and more t-shirts. G is for generations, getting from then to now, from them to us, reformulate our living history.
So intergenerational relationships have been a red line throughout the magazine. And we always had a big fascination and respect for previous generations of women, and especially, of course, lesbian and queer women and trans people who paved the way for us. So we've been featuring a lot of material about and interviews with these older generations. and also making sure that their history is not forgotten, and of course learn from them. But we're also featuring a lot of new and younger voices, and I think one of the most beautiful things is when they meet like a younger and an older voice, and they talk and interview each other. To actually have a look at what words like feminism, family, lesbian, queer mean when we look at them through an intergenerational lens.
And in our latest issue, the biography, we recreated some of the photographs and paintings by the artist called Gluck. And Gluck was a gender non-conforming British artist who lived at the beginning of the 20th century, and we made it into a fashion shoot. For the shoot, we only featured clothing, accessories, and ceramics by queer people from Europe and the USA, but also from India and Russia. H is for her and their story. Putting the other in history by digging the archives, bringing unseen images into daylight, and playing hide and seek with our multiple pasts.
So there have been many feminist and queer magazines, and also queer and feminist printers that started out of necessity to communicate and to create a community, and also, of course, to create visibility and be seen and be heard. And one of these publications is Herzies. It's a magazine that ran throughout the 80s, based from New York, and really also worked as a collective publication on arts and politics. And we liked the magazine so much that we created a very obvious tribute by having a Herzies section in the beginning of each issue that we make. And it's a list of short recommendations, short essays that we have collected from a broader Girls Like Us network. And I think what connects the magazine with these sort of previous generations of publications is, in a way, the lack of time, the lack of money, the lack of resources, and that also shapes sort of the outcome of the magazine. We come out once a year. It's really something that we make in our free time, in our spare time. It's really a labor of love more than something which is driven by market economy and market pressure. And we're inspired by the energy that's visible in the handmade, the body present in the design, and the collective effort that is allowed to be seen. Not by streamlining, but by allowing diversity and complexity and messiness, all the while translating this to the nowadays. And besides looking and learning from history, we also use it very concrete throughout the magazine and also in our t-shirts. So we have started a series of t-shirts where we reprint notes and texts from archives, for instance, from Gertrude Stein, Monique Wittig, Katie Acker, Claude Cahun, and Marcel Moore. And also here, and I think it came already before in the presentation, we're also like continuously looking how far we can stretch this idea of printing and trying to print beyond paper and move to different contexts to use or to fill.
I is for in real life. How we work, think, and produce together across cities, skill levels, and interests is a feminist question. So we are just two parts of a larger collaboration, and we are currently 4 people working on the magazine. And someone asked us once, how do you make it work? And we replied, we work, we rest. We work, we sleep, we eat, we have sex, we dance in the city, we walk in the forest or along the beach. We are constantly challenging the bandwidth of the Wi-Fi that we are on. Our faces are never high-res enough to feel close enough, but we do the best with the pixels that we get. And we add emails, millions of emails, and sometimes we misunderstand each other. And our biggest challenge is to maintain the feeling of working collectively while we are behind our separate screens. And we are very, very aware of how we are tied up in the service and software offered by huge corporations. And we are constantly looking for alternatives. And about 2 or 3 times a year we meet physically. And one of our strategies is to use residencies, like events, things that we can do together. And recently we did a residency at the Jan van Eyck Academy together. So, and then, yeah, we can share breakfast, drinks, make food together, and being in the same space together, which makes a big difference. Alice for Land. A place to coexist, create, meet, exchange. Think, walk, lie in the grass, stare at the sea, process, rest, write, forage, garden, feed the chickens, harvest, fish, eat, hug, and share.
And land is a very important thing in feminist history. I think you're all familiar with the story of Vita Sackville-West. She was this lady who lived in the beginning of the previous century, and she couldn't inherit her, she was like from nobility, she couldn't inherit her father's estate because she was a woman, and that was a big inspiration for Virginia Woolf and her book Orlando. Or there is the 70s Oregon publication called Countrywomen. It's quite a hardcore feminist lesbian guide on how to run your own land. And they were so radical that even boys, like children who were boys, weren't allowed to be part of the land they inhabited. Or the artist Andrea Zittel, who slowly, acre by acre, collects pieces of land in Joshua Tree in California to help her to keep the ground safe and sacred. And in the magazine, we have a particular infatuation with islands, to the extent that we feature what we call like a lesbian or queer island on the inside of every cover. It started obviously with Lesbos and went on to many different islands, for instance, Brač in Croatia, where there's a queer feminist festival every summer, to Klovarun, which is the island of the lesbian writer and the inventor of the Moomin, Tove Jansson, to Whale Cay, which is an island in the Caribbean, where lesbian ruler Jo Carstairs run her own empire, to Skomvar in Norway, where the Rost Collective has also like a queer summer residency. And finally, Jersey, the safe haven of Claude Cahun and Marcia Moore, and their cat Nike on the stamp.
M is for manifestos. A manifesto, a statement of principle, a mission statement. Manifesto, a declaration of the intent of an individual, organization, or group to make manifest. Sarah Ahmed, a Killjoy Manifesto, 2017. So we are currently working on our first publication next to the magazine, which will be a book of manifestos, written by women of all backgrounds, gender expression, hailing from all corners of the world. There will be the usual suspects, such as the Scum Manifesto by white lesbian Valerie Solanas, alongside manifestos by people of color, such as Afrofuturist Manifesto by Martine Sims, and many more.
And I want to read something from the editorial, which is obviously still in progress, but still. How do you manifest your desire for change? Where do you look for inspiration, understanding, role models? When you speak up, how many voices have spoken this way before you, and how many speak with you now? And then I think I also wanted to share some quotes from some of the manifestos that are part of the book, to bring us out of our Asian bondage into a truly new and liberated condition. And this is from the Black Women's Manifesto from 1970 by Eleanor Holmes Norton. Attributing high value to unproductive moments is an extension of life proposed by women. That's from the Rivolta Femminile Manifesto from 1977. To wear your lover's pussy as a beard, from Radical Tenderness, 2015. And here's a sneak peek into our upcoming manifesto pans, and there we go again, trying to print on something else than paper. So these were also made as prototypes while we were at the Jan van Eyck Academy. They have a beautiful silk screening facility, and we were very happy to use their workshop for that.
And N is for non-nuclear. Reconsider how we're living, how we're coupling, and how that is impacting communities. Being the magazine that we are, it's only logic that we are continuously searching for lived alternatives. And we will read a part of the editorial of our family issue, which says it all. Dear lovers, sisters, brothers, mothers, adopted aunts, long-lost fathers, half-cousins, wives, black sheeps, and partners in crime. As you know, we have a soft spot for collectives, collaborations, friendships, and support structures. People doing things with other people, loving, working, organizing, and living. These strategies of surviving together form an underlying thread throughout all of our issues, but this time we wanted to look more closely at one way of naming these friendly constellations, family.
So we dove into memories of childhood and images of being old. We opened up photo albums, revisited archives, and looked beyond the usual suspect, the nuclear family. Instead, we searched for lived alternatives, non-monogamy, families of friendships, interspecies love with rabbits, sheep, geese, chinchillas, dogs, cats, queer households, adopted children, and housing. But we also, in true family drama style, addressed arrangements that can and should be questioned, such as transnational adoption and the right to marry.
O is for outfit. Our design is impatient, playful, and fast. It is not a static container, and it is definitely not obsessed with details or glued to the page.
And it's a pity our graphic designer, Sarah Kamen, isn't here, but I'm going to speak for her a little bit. So working with the graphic design of Girls Like Us, one ambition has been to get away from the logic of newness. We felt that it's an easy trap to fall into when working with graphic design, to keep asking yourself, is this new enough? Instead, we want to use the magazine as a visual playground and an opportunity to learn and play. Playing is sometimes hindered by software, which is sometimes not that soft. It can actually be really stiff, and InDesign or Illustrator, Photoshop, they are very fixed. So, for instance, for the family issue, we worked around the family portrait, where we put the photos in frames that were made of saldo. Our issue on the future brings in a bunch of hand-marbled and painted paper as backgrounds. Our issue of economy is full of patterns that can also be found on printed money. And in a text on ecstatic writings by medieval women, we used the letters from Lingua Ignota, which is an alphabet constructed by Hildegard von Bingen, a poet and a nun who used these letters in her own mystic and mythical writing in the Middle Ages. And as the magazine features people more or less female throughout, the same goes for the typefaces, and most of the typefaces we use are made by women. And it's also a conscious choice to keep doing that and like expand even more. And in our latest issue, the biography issue, we used some fonts that were developed by Amsterdam-based designer Johanna Ede, who's doing a project called Post-Menopausal Graphic Design Strategies, and as part of this research created a font called Menopause that we use throughout the issue.
P is for print. Why print? Because we want to be held and carried around, shared with friends, spilled coffee on, slept on, forgotten, discarded, or saved. Why should anyone print anything? Why do we keep insisting on the heavy, impractical paper? It is expensive and it's time-consuming production. Because we are bodies, and we want to meet the physical bodies of our readers in physical form. And because we think it's important to take up space in the world. It's so easy to feel like you're being pushed back into your tiny smartphone. Everything and everyone is there anyway, so you could stay there. It's small, it's handy. But we want to resist, and we believe in the physical meetings and spaces that our magazine creates. Q is for queer time. Queer time is a time that never comes and is always now. We are never at one with our queerness.
So one of our favorite descriptions of queer time comes from the theorist Jack Halberstam, who wrote, "Queer time for me is the dark nightclub. The perverse turn away from the narrative coherence of adolescence, early adulthood, marriage, reproduction, child rearing, retirement, death."
And here is the editorial from our future issue. We want a future outside of straight time. A future in which all our friends and lovers and their lovers are coming over for dinner around the table we built together. We want a future that is fair, fun, furry, fabulous, fierce, free, and not fucked up. We want futures. We want a future in which state violence and violence in general are deeply retrograde. A future in which we have dismantled the harsh economic system that governs our lives and loves. We want a future of cohabitation and self-governance, a future that sees and acknowledges emotional labor. We want a future that understands the reality of being broke, of being evicted, of being talked down to, and of being ignored. We want a future that embraces weaknesses and where we come together, where we can learn and lean on each other and stand strong. We want a future that is not afraid of difference and that doesn't forget to dance once in a while. We want a future of diverse temporalities, a feminist clock, a future that rethinks speed. Oh. We want a future that honors all of its pasts, presents, and futures. We want a future of hugs and hands and sunshine and islands and collective intelligence. We want our future organized differently. And could you throw in time travel too? S is for space. S is for safer spaces. I didn't realize how toxic the outside was till I understood what a safer space was.
So besides making the magazine, we find it obviously very important that the bigger girls like us network gets together to meet, greet, and exchange. So we like to create spaces. And in this process, we expand our politics and sensibility from the magazine out into space, out into the real world, through all these various temporalities. So we've been hosting parties, concerts, workshops, brunches, weekend-long get-togethers, temporary shops, film screenings, performances, DJ workshops, reading, talks, and whatnot in many different cities like Amsterdam, Brussels, Vancouver, London, Berlin, New York, Milan, Rotterdam, Bilbao, and well, many, many more, and now here in Eindhoven. I can read it: Stockholm, Copenhagen, okay. Toronto, Brussels, okay, Hamburg, Rotterdam.
Okay, so Brussels, where the two of us are based right now, has not had an out lesbian bar for more than 15 years. And in 2018, as well as 2019, as this coming summer, together with a much bigger team of amazing people, we co-organized Mothers and Daughters, a lesbian and trans bar, run by lesbians, for lesbians and their friends. Not your regular bartenders, not your regular menu, and not your regular economy. Not your regular program, not your regular decorations, and definitely not your regular evening. A nod to a previous generation who defined lesbian culture, and a tribute to precious lesbian bars everywhere. Mothers and Daughters was a safer space for celebration and otherworldly activities and encounters in the center of town. U is for us. from lesbian to lesbian and everything in between.
So we constantly rethink the way we say things and which words we use. So in that sense, language is very important, especially as a magazine and you work with print. And in that context, it's interesting, for instance, to see how the word lesbian has changed over the last couple of decades. Basically, in the time that I've been working on the magazine, it became a whole different thing. So it's either been replaced by the word queer, or it's used as a very sexualized term. But we love the word, and we share the vision of Swedish collective Mycket, who use an asterisk or a heart as a subtle footnote to redefine the world. And for girls like us, this means embracing and celebrating all possible forms of love and intimacy between people who identify on the female side of the gender spectrum, who have identified as such or have been ascribed a female gender at some point in their lives. So basically, we embrace gender as a spectrum full of possibilities.
Gender is fluid, something constructed and performed. Boychild, a performance artist that we've interviewed in issue number 5, says, if I were to identify as any gender, it would be trans. Trans as a constantly oscillating point on the spectrum, a journey that never stops or ends or lands in one place. I wish gender weren't such a big deal. If it were more fluid and not that offensive, it would be way more fun and definitely more safe for so many people. Actually, I think for the entire world. And X is for kisses.
So that was a talk. Thank you. And
yeah. So we are very happy to talk to you and answer your questions if there's any now. Yeah.
No. Yeah? Yeah, I'm just wondering if you actually could comment on how you see like the media landscape at the moment operating. And like, if you look at even mainstream publications that are really giving a platform to a lot of trans-exclusionary radical feminists at the moment. For example, The Guardian just on Monday published something from Suzanne Moore that was an incredibly transphobic piece. And this is a, you know, even progressive, more left-wing, mainstream, very widely read publications that are kind of having a tendency that way. So I wonder, yeah, if you just have any comments on that in general, or...
yeah, it's of course something that we've been confronted with as well. There is, unfortunately, especially with an older generation of lesbians, and I think also with women in general, like this kind of transphobia, where I think they had to fight hard for their own rights, and they're like a bit, you know, defensive towards trans people. But it's something we totally don't accept or tolerate, and we even had a contributor, someone, for instance, Nina Power. She's a critic for, or a theoretical writer. She writes, I think, also for the Guardian. Yeah, we refused a piece by her because of that, actually. So, yeah, it's something which is very present. It's a bit less, thank God, with the younger generation, but yes. I hope it answers your question. I'm sure. And it's also, for instance, when I talked about mothers and daughters, that we also added for this edition, like a lesbian and trans bar. I'm aware it's going maybe very much into identity politics, but it's really to make clear that it really is that kind of place, and that we, yeah, that we just don't accept any, any toxic whatever behavior towards trans people.
I have a question more related to your funding, because you were talking about how you like working together with fashion companies, because you see them as somehow queer, I guess. But you were also saying that you're looking now for alternatives, and what kind of alternatives are you looking into specifically for that?
Yes. Yeah, I think it's so far we have been mainly like, I will say surviving, because it's hard. It's hard work. Yeah, please. On cultural, but yeah, mostly like one fashion ad on the back, which is what they want, and then a little some cultural ads sprinkled through the issues, not a lot, which kind of has been paying for like the biggest chunk of the commercial one commercial ad. But the reality, so one of these issues is a black and white issue, which is not the latest, but the one before. Not that one. it's fully printed in black and white, which is our economy issue, where we kind of started to re-question our own economy and how do we exist as a feminist and queer publication, because we haven't been able to pay real fees. Like we pay tiny fees, but as the people that we feature are already more likely to be underpaid and under-resourced in their daily lives, this is something that we really wanted to question and kind of find solutions for. So
printed in black and
so that's why this issue is black and white, because in the kind of older, before we have been focusing on kind of offering a high quality, well printed, high produced platform for these people. So we were also questioning like what are other ways to kind of free up budget and pay fees. And now we have kind of paused for a little bit making the magazine to start, and we have been starting that, a kind of a research into what are other ways to finance a magazine, and maybe we can have one feet in this commercial context and one foot in maybe more institutional support or funding, which is something that we haven't had. Also, to kind of keep this autonomy, but it's something that we're going to explore in the near future. So, it's in process, let's say.
Someone else has a question? Yeah, I was also interested in like if you could tell a bit more about like your process of like just more like the editorial part, just quite general still. Okay. So we work with themes, and which kind of just happened to us. We have like we meet all in person to do this kind of brainstorm, and like for a couple of days try to come up with different directions where it kind of mapping this idea, and then we all go off in different directions and kind of come back and pitch to each other different ideas of which like content. And it's very mostly have new content made, of course, but sometimes we have republishing like older pieces that already exist but like have been hidden or stuff like this.
But I think we all, it's sort of a collective thing, but it's more like we all have ideas of things that we want to have in the issue, and then we all work on it individually, and then we come together a couple of times and discuss, but it's not like we're really sitting together and writing together. We've been doing this, for instance, at Jan van Eyck and at certain occasions, which is amazing if the time is there to do that, but it's mostly us behind our separate computers and talking through Skype and things like that, yeah.
But we do have like kind of job titles. So even though we are a collective, I think we have like different focuses. So we kind of inform each other and like collaborate in different ways.
I was wondering, is this your main profession, or do you guys work this on the side?
No. So nobody, like as I said, there's not real fees for contributors. There is no fees for editors. Even though, we cannot really, it's really paying for itself, basically, more or less. So it's super amazing to do, but it's
cannot live from it. But we are all working in creative sector. I'm a visual artist. I make more money with that and teaching and other things. And
yeah, and I think it was also mentioned in the beginning. I work a bit as a consultant, and I do like copywriting and editorial strategy and advice and things like that.
And so how is this magazine really implemented in like your lives, since it's not like your profession really? How are you linking this with like?
Yeah, well, it's been, I think for me as an artist, it's really powerful and amazing to be able to kind of give a platform to other artists, which is, yeah, really enriched my own kind of understanding of working and being able to reach out and be like, I love what you're doing, I want to, let's collaborate. And I often also do this kind of like, not really collaboration, but kind of really intensive support for whatever this person wants to make, which I find extremely exciting. And yeah, we meet a lot of great people by traveling, getting invited to do talks, different places, to do book fairs. I mean, it kind of becomes this cloud like that moves and generates interesting encounters. And also like said, like creating spaces. So by doing the bar project, kind of changed my life completely. So yeah, it's in that sense, I think it's a huge impact in many ways.
No, it's actually stupid. Is that bar still in Brussels?
We are still looking for a space. So it's an ephemeral space. We started just for 3 weeks, and then it became 2 months. So now it's just for 2 months every summer. So this is going to be the 3rd summer that we'll do it in May and June. So we are looking for a space right now. So please come to Brussels if you want to dance with us.
Where? Yeah. Okay. Cool.
It's not a summer bar. It's a spring bar.
Yeah, spring.
Even better.
Yeah.
You should check out L'Usine. They're looking for people to take their place.
Sorry.
You should check out L'Usine. L'Usine. It's in Brussels, and they're looking for people to take their place for
okay.
Ephemera.
Yeah, please give me their email address.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay. I was wondering if you have any formal structures around intersectionality, like involving different races, different backgrounds, or does it just kind of happen naturally for you? Because I work as part of a small queer magazine, and we kind of struggle sometimes to get people of different backgrounds, and especially people of color involved. It can be quite hard to sort of
Well, it's something we struggle with as well. Unfortunately. I think, as we mentioned before, like at this point, we're really rethinking the magazine. And one of the things we really want to do is also like expand the editorial team and look for people from more diverse backgrounds. But it's always, I think it's quite a delicate thing to do, because it easily becomes you ticking boxes or like the token, whatever. So, and also like with the bar we're involved in, it's the same thing. And I think for this edition, we really have a team that we call like the mixicity team, just to make sure that we also like really have enough different voices in the team and in the programmation. But it's true, it's something, it's a constant, it's like really something, you constantly have to think about. And I wish it came more naturally somehow, but and we're also like white and yeah.
Yes, is it my turn to ask? Okay. I was wondering, since you have been running this for a long period of time, I would assume that you have a vast archive of materials, not only the magazine issues, but like all sort of materials that you create along the publication of your magazine. How do you manage that, and how, I don't know, I wonder if you're just storing it or if it's in use, and if you see your first or second magazine issues, like, do you still feel the same? And like, do you sometimes republish it or revise it?
I can talk about the archive, and you can talk about the other part of the question. I can talk about the archive, which is just, this kind of plastic curver boxes, which is in our in our apartment. I don't know if we're really good at archiving. Because there is always, like, for example, with T-shirts, there is always somebody who's like, oh, I love that T-shirt. Yeah, oh, there's just one left. Okay, well, just take it. So, I don't know. Maybe we should do better. But we do, make sure that there are libraries and other archives kind of have full sets of the issues, because some of the magazines have sold out over time. So we kind of like make sure that there are this sets around.
Well, I think for me, what I like the most is that people have been sending and giving lots of their own work over the years that we made the magazine. So for me, I would say that would be some kind of archive in a way that is more like a timeline and a way to interact with other people. And we have something that we call like the mini feminist library, which is like mostly zines and stuff that, like we do a lot of book fairs and stuff, so people come and, but I think when I started, there was way more this culture of sending things, really like via post, and also like in the first issues, people had to like send couriers with prints, and then it became CD-ROMs and like all these things, and now it's so much is happening digital that it's also difficult, I guess, or not difficult, but like not so obvious to keep a physical archive in that way. It's more like a folder on your computer or Dropbox or things like that. So, but I feel like it's funny, if I look back at older issues, it's like issues I was a bit critical about at the time. I feel like there's been quite an interest in the older issues again, so I think things go around and yeah. But we've never had a couple of questions to maybe make a book or something, but so far we've never done it, and I also don't know if that's like really the purpose. But I think on the website there's quite a good timeline of all the issues and all the content, so yeah.
It's Megan. I was wondering, with with you guys having such a long period of time with this magazine, there's been, in my opinion, a massive evolution in how feminism and queer topics have appeared in popular vision and just in the popular spectrum. How has that affected, what's your personal take on, this evolution and how it's being demonstrated, and has that affected, and impacted the way you guys considered this magazine and changed it over the time?
Yeah, I think it changed massively, and I think for us it's only been good, because I think when we started I remember that we also had interviews with women who didn't want to be labeled feminist or didn't like the word, and there was a lot of taboo and bad associations. And then also, while we mentioned it a bit in the talk, the word lesbian changed also a lot, queer came, and right now there's so many different ways to talk about being queer, what it means, what gender means, binary, the non-binary. No, but I think for us it has been very enriching, but also very challenging to stay relevant and not to be taking too much of a position, but definitely speak out and opening up, being more intersectional, all these things. I think really the magazine reflects in a way the bigger societal development.
I think because you were talking how this kind of seeping of queer culture into mainstream media has been mostly positive for you. I personally see like also a big problem in the kind of commercialization of queer culture and how it's being, you know, it's being kind of taken by big corporations for things like pinkwashing. But you don't really experience that, or?
Oh yes, of course. I mean, I don't know if we experience it, but of course it's going on big time, yes. But I think I'm sometimes surprised that the kind of magazine we are, that we don't get more requests from there. But I think it's kind of clear where we stand, so maybe, they don't come to us, but yeah. No, it's a bit ironical, like we got on our cover, we have a work by Judy Chicago. And the work, it's a painting, but on the cover it's a scarf that she made an edition with a company in the States. And we used it in the fashion shoot. And she wanted money for it because we saw it as a tribute. But then at the same time, in the end, it's fine. We don't have to pay her. But then she did this big thing during Paris Fashion Week with Dior, which I think is 20 times more. I don't know, I think it's quite interesting and fascinating to see how, like, I don't know, established artists take this moment, you know, to really get bigger recognition, but then at the same time that you would chase like a small publication like us, you know, I find it a bit bizarre. But there's a lot to say on that. That could be a whole talk by itself, I think. So, no, it's true.
Due to the time limit, we're going to have to wrap it up here, but they're going to stay for the drinks later. Yes. Give it up for Girls Like Us.